Hello, you amazing hackers. Hope you're all doing well today. I have Chris Dale with me, which is also an amazing hacker. Thank you very much for joining me. For the people who haven't seen you before, could you introduce yourself real quick, please?
Sure thing. So my name is Chris Dale. I'm from Norway and been always been passionate about hacking and wanted to get into the scene and so on. I started out as a developer, moved my way into IT operations and eventually management. And now I just started my own company where we're doing penetration testing and incident response and consulting in general.
That's really interesting. I saw on your channel as well that you were a SANS certified instructor. That's something I really, when people ask me for cheat sheets or that kind of stuff, I always point them to the SANS papers because they're super in depth and I really like them. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? What you do over there?
Sure. So, being a science instructor, it's a very privileged thing to be able to do. Lecturing to thousands of people, traveling the entire world, and presenting and having fun with fellow hackers and so on. The road to becoming certified is kind of steep, so it's a lot of work that you normally must put in terms of like you have to certify yourself. Then SAMs have to approve you. There's a long process. You have to go through things like a murder board, for example, where you have to prove yourself towards other senior instructors, and they will
Wow.
probe and try to kill you more or less, right, to see if you're good enough.
Oh, wow. That sounds super scary. I've heard about these murder boards before, but I thought OSCP was one until I heard about those kind of things, like the questions they ask you, they go to the bone.
Yeah.
So you,
They
sorry.
they kind of want to like select the best of the best, so to speak. Like they want to like make sure that you can deal with a harsh classroom environment where you have, for example, someone who don't like you, for example. You could meet those people, right? Or where you have someone in the classroom who are much smarter than you are. So how do you deal with that? Like, are you capable of like realizing that there are people smarter than you that know more than you do on certain topics, for example? And then also, how do you cater for noobs and people who are just getting into this field? Like, you still have to make them feel welcome, but then again, you can't make them like you can't turn around the entire class just for someone who is completely new, right? So there's a good balance you have to find there and make sure that you can cover all the bases in the classroom. And if you can do all of those things and you're good technical and all of that stuff, uh, yeah, that's when you start looking into becoming certified.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I always wanted to become a teacher myself, so I also have some expert certifications on performance testing. I also went to
Nice.
Paris to do that kind of stuff, and it's the fact that you are able to help others so much. It really draws me to this field. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about what makes you want to teach for people?
So it started out. I didn't really have a need to be presenting or anything, but it started out. I started out like having ideas and concepts that I felt other people didn't either understand or I could teach them something. Like I wanted at least to be heard. I wasn't too much concerned about it having to be bleeding edge or brand new research. I just felt that hey, there's a lot of things to share here that people haven't already understood, for example. So that's why I started putting in some call for papers here and there. And it turned out to be something that I like doing quite a bit, like seeing people and feeding off their energy in a room environment where I kind of recharge myself and playing off people. It was very rewarding for me. And also in preparation of teaching, I tend to study quite a bit to prepare myself to all of the different kinds of questions that you might receive. So, say for example, I'm going to talk about cross-site scripting, and I go through my slides, and there's something that I'm curious about myself. You can be sure that someone in the room is going to ask about that thing. So you're going to dig, you're going to research, and you're going to figure out what's up before you do that teach, and that essentially makes you a lot smarter.
Yeah, exactly. The reason I asked is exactly the reason you gave is because like whenever I release a video, I have to make sure that my topic is researched very, very properly because number one,
Yeah.
you cannot say anything wrong about it because you know there's somebody out there who's going to know the answer. And I think that's even worse for YouTube than for a classroom because you have
Yeah.
the whole world can watch your video.
For
Um,
life. It's recorded for life, right?
yeah, exactly. I've only had my YouTube channel for like maybe 2 or 3 months, and I've said some crazy dumb things on there. I've said some stupid mistakes and I'm setting up a website to rectify them all. Now, the dumbest mistake I said was that Docker was running in a virtual machine instead of a container, and I got smacked for that. Rightly so, of course, because it's absolutely not that. Now, that was a bit more for my entertainment, that question, so sorry, because I also have very much interest in becoming a teacher. If we go back a little bit more into pen testing, you have a whole lot of experience, both in teaching and you learn a lot there, and in doing pen testing, of course. What would be your number one advice you would give for people who want to get into the hacking scene?
So, number one advice for me, I think, would be to seek to understand before you seek to solve something. So look for the why this is happening, not how do I break this stuff, right? So in fact, whenever I observe someone else doing hacking, or I'm coaching someone over a CTF, for example, if I see them trying to hack something before they even try the functionality, before they say, what's your name? They ask me on the website. And I always put in Chris, for example. And then I put in maybe -1, and I put in maybe a large number, and then maybe some special characters eventually. But if I see people like immediately go, what's your name? Boom, attacks. I'm thinking, no, 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 no. You're trying to solve. You're not building that understanding, that thorough, well done understanding of what actually goes on the back end. So I think if you can shift your mindset into wanting to understand and make sure that you really want it, that's when you will just go autopilot, and more things will become clear for you.
I really like that advice because that's something I've been struggling with myself as well, especially in the beginning. I looked at everything like something I could attack, but hacking is a puzzle and it's really interesting if you can lay all those pieces together, especially when it comes for me. I have a very unique approach to penetration testing. Most hackers, most attackers, they go for a known top 10 vulnerability like cross-site scripting, SSTI, that kind of stuff. I exclusively look for logic flaws. And when you look for logic flaws, it's really, well, first of all, you need to have a program that allows you to do that. So you need to have full functionality, which is something I want to talk about a little bit later. But second of all, if you really want to get to know your logic flaws, you have to get to know your application. So my first advice that I always give people is when everybody else is firing up their tools, you should be just reading the manual for a couple of hours and getting to know the application. That's something.
RTFM goes a long way to RTFM.
What? Sorry,
Read the fine manual, right?
All right. Yeah, exactly. That's advice I got from Inti. He's a really good hacker in Belgium. I read it somewhere. He does a lot of email hacking as well, and that's also probably a question I would like to ask you. If you're approaching a target, and you see like maybe 50 different ports open with all different functionality, is there like a priority you put on those ports, or do you just go with the one that feels right?
So of course, like which service that you're gonna attack will depend on where you're comfortable in, like your skill sets are. If you have a ton of open ports, you probably want to start off with a place where you feel that, hey, I can contribute. Like say, for example, HTTP web applications, for example, or maybe you have a lot of background into SIP, for example, or you know how, say, for example, spool work, whatever. But with that many ports, you might also seek some guidance from a vulnerability scanner to check for CVEs. So do some banner grabbing and see if there's like anything that you might find in terms of banners and weaknesses. But at least what I see, a lot of companies these days, like from their external facade, so their external front of the company, a lot of times things are patched and decently robust. And if you find like weaknesses, like say a CV for something, often it's not just going to be like Eternal Blue or Heartbleed or Shell Shock. It's not going to be that big of a deal anymore, right? You're not just going to pop a shell. In fact, if you're going to take advantage of something, sometimes you would have to actually chain exploits and make things work together. But logic flows, yeah, that's really cool. And I really love seeing and reading those bug reports for logic flaws, because some of them are just dang brilliant. It's like, that's so clever. You fooled the system, you fooled the developers. That's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the that stems pretty much from my day job. I'm a software tester, and I know all the software testing methodologies. I work with Safe, I work with Agile, work with V-model, waterfall, all of that kind of stuff. So for
Yeah.
me, if you one of the advices I always give as well when you want to become a pen tester is that you should read up a little bit about all of the different dev methodologies and all of the things that developers do, because one of the things I find really interesting is that you see a lot of hackers, they go for a target and they only attack it once and they never return to it. Whereas
Mm.
I know that release cycles happen once every 2 weeks, especially these days. So would you, if you go for a target, are you one of those people that will go for it once, or will you go back to the target sometimes?
So why don't you just like say you have a target of a web application? What you could do is that you could like SHA-1 the different pieces of the website and just like every day pull the website and see if there's any changes of JavaScript or functions, whatever. And if there's a change, you can go investigate, right? So like you're almost like monitoring for changes and alerted when something is changed, and you can start attacking those changes.
That's really interesting. Automation is a really big part of pen testing for me, especially if you automate the right parts. It's also
Right.
really what a lot of people do, and I've seen that happen, and I say a lot because I have a Slack group as well, and a Discord group as well. And what I often see happen is that people they fire up all of these tools and that kind of stuff, um, and they start automating and they get a lot of false positives. For me, it's
Oh yeah.
really easy to automate the false positives and to refine your automation is a really hard process for me. One of the things
Mm.
I've been playing with is test automation on a web application that you can just rerun every single time with attack vectors. But
Okay.
again, it would take very deep understanding of your web application. Now, let's
Yeah.
say you're really hacking deep into that web application and suddenly you find the CVE, but there hasn't been a POC developed for it yet. Is that something that you would usually go deeper into and try to develop that POC for yourself? Or do you say, no, there hasn't been a POC yet, there's a bounty of $5,000 for this proof of concept. I'm probably not going to be the one to find it. It's
No, 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 no. So some of the proof of concepts are really simple. I mean, like if you don't know how to develop and program, some of the proof of concepts they look very scary, right? Like it looks like something. Oh, I can do this. But if you boil down all the code to the actual problem, in many cases, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, especially not in terms of web applications. It's doable. It's understandable. The entry level is decent. There's not like a huge learning curve to get into it. So definitively, if you can't find a POC online, you can go your own route and experiment for sure. So I do have some videos on my YouTube channel, or maybe it's for Sans. I can't remember if it's on my YouTube or with Sans. But I made a video one time on something called the minimum viable testing methodology, which essentially allows you to find discrepancies and anomalies in web applications that you can then dig deeper into and start building attacks upon whatever you have found that looks like it might be something that can be used for an attack. So you're not testing for OWASP top 10. Instead, you're testing for everything, even unknown vulnerabilities. And if there's something weird, that's where you start going into the details and start attacking it.
That's really interesting because I think you do some bug bounty hunting yourself. I think if you come across these, sometimes I come across a target and I enter some strange value and I get some strange feedback, but I don't know if I should go looking deeper into it or not. So that's something I've been really looking for. Thank you very much for that suggestion. If I would,
Yeah, no problem. And when you find something, so that's how you collaborate on penetration tests or even bug bounty programs, because collaboration can be hard.
yeah.
How would me and you split a pen test, for example, or split up an engagement? Most teams, they would say, yeah, well, you do this script and then you do this script, and you split the workload 50-50. But that's not ideal because you want to use both your brains to solve the actual problem. So what you could do is you could use this minimum viable methodology, and when you find something that might be interesting, that's when both of you jump onto that interesting thing and together work on that specific tiny thing that might be a vulnerability or not.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's been something we've been getting into with the Discord group as well. We've been doing some collaboration with 6 people, and it's super hard to get everybody to do a meaningful job because
Exactly.
people are looking for cross-site scripting, but you know that the cross-site scripting is going to be almost impossible due to the technology used. So what do you tell that person? And it would really help me to finally have some minimum viable testing methodology. And also,
Yeah.
I think that's good advice for general life. You have to strive always for a minimum viable product. Something I always
Hmm.
do wrong, also in my YouTube videos. I release one video and I delete at least 4 or 5 for every single one that I release because I want everything to be perfect. And even
Yeah.
then, when I release it, it's not perfect.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a big problem, especially with technicians, like people who are within IT and security. We tend to go for the 100%, right? And that's really hard. You have to spend a lot of time to get to 100%, but very many cases we can spend 20% of our time and we can get to 80%. We
Yeah,
can get to, and that might be good enough, right? That's
exactly.
actually the reason why I changed jobs from development into IT operations because I had a passion to become a hacker. I wanted to hack. That was the dream. I've been doing the reading and studying of hacker culture and all of that stuff. I was like sold on the concept. And when I was working as a developer, and they tried to headhunt me into IT operations. And I was the first one to say, well, it's not going to be me. Get out of there. I'm going to become the lead hacker. So, of course, I'm going to be doing development. But then I actually went thinking for a while. So, for about a week or so, I was thinking and I thought to myself, look, what will make my skills shine? So, I can develop now in Java Enterprise. I can do Java Beans, Java Server Faces. I've developed skills over the past 2, 3 years to develop these technologies. What's the next 2, 3 years going to look like? Am I going to learn a lot of new things within Java Enterprise, for example? Probably not too much, right? But if I went to go into IT operations, what would that do to my hacker aspirations and career? Well, I would learn about middleware. I would learn about application servers, load balancers, networks, databases. I would see that stack of technology from a completely different light. So I said, look, I want that job. Give it me. I'm on board.
That's
And
exactly.
unfortunately, then what happened was quite unfortunate, actually. You know what happens to some people who are, if you do your job well, right? If you're a good technician, for example, at one point in your career, you're probably going to get promoted to a manager. And that's what happened. And it sucked, you know? Managing people is not for me. I like to be on the keyboard doing technology, not talking with people all day, which is fine. Like I do like people, but I think people deserve a lot more than I can give them in terms of management.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you cannot bring enough value to the table to fill out the position that's required at that moment. And
Yeah.
I'm currently a software test lead, so I have some people whenever I have an issue in software testing, they come to me, and I really really like doing that job, but I miss the technology side of it. You know, I miss being behind that keyboard writing test
Yeah.
automation. That's why I also do this stuff on the side. It really allows me to do some bug bounty hunting and to get in there for a couple of hours when the kids are asleep.
Hmm.
That's for me is a big part of it. I only have a couple of doubts left, and for me, there a big one of those is how much time do I actually spend enumerating versus how much time do I spend attacking my target. But I
Yeah.
think your methodology that you recommended will be a great answer to that as well. And the 80/20 rule that I also learned from Christy as well, it's been a great guideline for me throughout my
Hmm.
entire life, not just throughout my hacking career. Um, One thing I have a little bit of trouble with still is people, they sometimes come to me and they ask or they tell me I'm a noob, I'm not good, I'm still a beginner. When did you stop feeling like a script kiddie and start feeling like a hacker?
Right. Um, so I don't know when it was, but I do know the difference I'm feeling now. So I remember back when I was a script kiddie, I would look at, for example, a cheat sheet, say a cheat sheet for hacking, and I would say, "Ooh, wow, these things, if I run these things, they're probably going to give me some shell or something. It's going to give me some access, right?" So I was looking at these things and I'm like, "Ooh, shiny." However, now that I'm more like capable, I look at, say, a cheat sheet or a piece of code or technology, and I go, yeah, sure, I know this. I've seen it before. I know what this does. I know what this does. If there's something that I don't know, it's like I'm not like I'm like I can dig into that and figure it out. So I think that's that mental shift from it just being you're being like super curious and like wow intrigued by everything to the point where you're like with experience saying that, hey, I know I can do this because I've done all of these other things, and computers are deterministic. They should be predictable. The back end might be a bit like in a black box, but I'm sure if I enumerate enough, I can learn more about it and tailor my attacks better. So for me, it was just that shift sometime during my career when I was finally like independent in my own mind. I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of the same story for me. I also had that kind of clicky moment when I was like, it all started for me when I reported my first bugs, and they were just regular cross-site scripting attack vectors, you know. And I was like, oh, cool, I can do cross-site scripting that I copied from the internet somewhere. But then I started encountering web application filters, and I started putting two web application filters up against each other. They had both
Right.
installed and they were fighting each other, and that was a way to get through the web application firewall. But even now, looking back into it, I was still a newbie back then because I just reported a cross-site scripting. I didn't try to escalate my impact, and that's for me when a big click happened, is when I started to look for impact and what am I actually doing
Mm-hmm.
for the company I'm testing. Which again brings me back to the point that I spent so much time testing my web application, just the core business of it. Um, is there anything you would recommend for people? I always tell them to go look for hidden gems, to look for stuff that's not easy to find for other hackers. Is there maybe anything you could recommend to find some more deeper stuff from a web application? You know, I say, for example, you can always just go to Google and you can search for Trello boards around that application. Maybe some sloppy developer left some stuff up on Trello. Um,
Ah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gotcha. So if there's anything I would suggest in terms of the methodology on how to start poking and finding something, right?
yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was a little bit unclear, but
Gotcha. Yeah. So there's two things that I think will stand out quite a bit. The first thing is very often, like at least I see when my customers get hacked, and also when we find some huge gaping vulnerability, it is very often true the path least traveled. So it's true the applications that are not necessarily the front websites, but maybe some side road, some side application somewhere. And basically, that boils down to who has the best reconnaissance, scanning, and discovery processes. Who does the best job of enumeration and finding stuff other people haven't already found? So what I like to do is very specific. I like to take the tool CeWL by Diggy Ninja. It creates word lists. And I basically, after I've done my initial reconnaissance, I create word lists of every single application that they have. And I use those word lists as part of my content discovery and as part of my DNS brute forcing, as part of all those processes, trying to find something else. Second tip I would advise you to do, and this is a part of the minimum viable methodology as well, is basically for every single input, every single script, every single input parameter, you want to you want to test every byte with and without URL encoding from 00 all the way up to FF. That's a really nice way to get some insights on which characters are blacklisted, filtered, that might cause the middleware to break, that might cause the application to break, and so on, so that you can basically change your methodology or your process when you see, for example, a tick being causing some kind of difference. That tick or double quote might lead you into an SQL injection, for example. So you will change into maybe more SQL-like approach of your attacks.
that's a really good one. Thank you very much for that. It's
There's also a third one that I don't see. I don't see people doing this, and I've only presented on it a couple of times, but I can share it with you guys as well. But it has to, these URL shorteners, so bit.li and so on. There is a team out there that specializes in brute forcing URL shorteners. So they're every day brute forcing URLs for more than 100 different URL shorteners out there. So I wrote a blog post along with a buddy of mine, and it's on the Sans pen testing blog, where basically I take all of their brute force material and we index it in Elasticsearch. And with Kibana, we can now query for basically URL shortened URLs.
Wow.
So I will look in those brute force results for anyone who is a part of my bug bounty program, for example, or any of my customers. And sometimes you will find all kinds of really weird stuff. You will see that admins have URL shortened internal links that expose functionality. You will see booking codes and hotel reservations. You will see ongoing attacks like SQL, command injection, all kinds of stuff where attackers are sharing links with one another, and those links have been brute force, and you can actually see attacks in progress.
Wow.
So it's pretty fun.
That's super cool. That's really awesome, man. So thank you very much for that. Those are some really cool tips. About Cool, I made a video about that. Funny thing is, it's my least watched video, and it's by far my most valuable because Cool is such an amazing tool. And you
Oh
can
yeah,
then,
it's a nice one.
I also just use John to randomize the word lists that I gain, and then I just make some password word lists as well for some other parts of the application. I cannot tell you how many bugs I found doing that. It's
Yeah,
unbelievable. All right.
exactly.
To finish off, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your company? Because that sounds really interesting. What's your main focus?
Right. So first of all, it's called river security, and a river is actually just like a river floating water, right? So a river made of water. That's based. That's what the name is based out of. And why would I choose a river? Because it has to do with what we call upstream thinking. So when we have problems, we have, say, vulnerabilities, whatever, you can imagine this being a river floating down a lot of water. You hear someone calling for help down by the riverbed. You go down there and you see a man rescuing up a child floating downstream. So you're helping this man get the child up on land. And eventually, once you've rescued the child, there's another child coming downstream, and there's another one, and there's another one. And after several hours, you're there rescuing children. And that's when you say, "Hey, dude, I'm done. I got to go." And he said, "What? You can't leave?" Well, I'm not leaving. I'm going upstream to kick that guy who is kicking out all the kids in the river. I'm going to find that guy who keeps putting children in the river. It's upstream thinking. And it's really important in cybersecurity to try to find those long-term fixes for organizations so they don't introduce more weaknesses and vulnerabilities in the long term. Short term, you can patch, but long term, there's patch management, there's software development life cycles, and so much more that we can focus on to build more resilient organizations. So basically, it's I just had a job posting out. So we're gonna basically be working with a third guy in September, I think. So it's a company reserved only for what I would call specialists or principal consultants, senior consultants within offensive services. So primarily pen testing, reconnaissance, basically the digital footprint, continuously mapping out organizations, red teaming, so physical break-ins and the whole shebang, covering all of that stuff. As in general, very fun.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. I really like that analogy. It's really something you can apply to anything in life, really. Also, in my software testing, we try shift left testing as much. So we try to put as much on unit testing as possible.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, maybe just one more question to finish off. If you could give people one tip for putting something on their resume that really stands out to you, what would that be?
Okay, so I in my previous job, which I just resigned not too long ago, right? So my company is brand new. I was in charge of hiring a ton of people, and I hired a lot of penetration testers and so on. And what stands out for me is commitment and curiosity to the industry. So just the fact that you're making a YouTube channel right now, right? I don't care how many subscribers you have, how many views you have. I just care about seeing people passionate and committed to doing the job. I want to find people who don't shut off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, you will take your vacation, you will not work yourself to death. But I want people who at 8 o'clock in the afternoon, they go like, that problem I had at work earlier today, I wonder how I can solve that. So I look for people who are sharing or in somehow, some way, shape, or form is contributing back to the community. That's normally my first trigger. Okay. If I don't have that type of, so if you can share, if you can start producing whatever it is, like blog posts, anything that just means you're giving back, that's a good thing. And the second thing I was looking for is the practical skills. I didn't look too much at the academia, so master's degrees and so on. Sure, you can have it, but it's not like the requirement for me. I would much rather see people do it on a keyboard, and I was actually putting people as part of a job interview. I was putting them straight into CTF.
Wow. Yeah, that's the
So
best
now
way to find out.
yeah. Now you got to do SSH tunnel. I want to see you do proxy chains and get Nmap to run through proxy chains, for example. If you are at least a bit like advanced or at least a bit like work with this stuff, that's something that you've done on several occasions. So I expect you to be able to solve that. I don't want to see you read the manual. I want to see you Google. I want to see how you work. So with the right ideas and passion, I think you can get really far, but there are very few times there are shortcuts, right?
Exactly.
And just accept the fact that some people are faster than you. Some people, they click faster, they get things faster. That's fine. Don't become discouraged because some people just have this talent made for something like cybersecurity, right? Myself, people think that Chris been doing this since he was born, so of course he's got a lot of talent. But the truth is that I haven't. I was actually, I was working as a service electrician. I've been a tire repair guy. I've been working at hotels, cleaning sheets and doing all kind of stuff. So only when I was like 21, 22, I actually started working full time within IT. Right. So it's not like I've had all of this previous experience, and it's not like I'm super smart either. It's just that I like to work hard and commit myself to finding out why problems happen and what actually goes on.
Yeah, exactly. That's really important to understand because not everybody gets an equal opportunity either. So I always tell people compare yourself to yesterday, not to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Advice I live by. So I would like to thank you very much for your time, Chris. I would like to also thank Sparsh for connecting us because he's the one who got this interview arranged. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, he's
very
a cool
much.
guy.
Yeah, I really like him as well. So I would like to thank you very much, and I hope I'll see you soon. I'm going to put those resources that we mentioned in the description below as well, so people can watch them. And
Sure.
I'll see you next time. Bye.
See you next time, man. Nice chatting with you. Bye-bye.